them people around you. 9.7. Okay, discounts, markups, sales tax, and tips. Basically, they're all very similar on how you come up with them mathematically. Okay, and so first of all, I want to talk about what each one is. First of all, when we talk about discount, okay, that's usually like a sales price. Okay, you walk into a store and they say 20% off everything, or they say 10% off everything. Okay, that's a sales price. Now, the problem is most of the time when you walk into stores and they have like a 10% off sale or a 20% off sale or a 25% off sale, they don't have the sale price marked. Okay, and so you need to be able to figure out what the discount is, so you don't get gypped off when you get to the register. Okay, or they're not doing it on purpose usually, but a lot of times somebody's got to program into the computer what to do when they ring the price in. Okay, so it's human error. Okay, I've actually had this happen to me once before. It was 30% off sale, take it to the cash register, go to pay, and they only took 10% off. And originally what it was a second tier of the pricing. Originally it was 10% off, and then it was a store that was closing. And so when I got there, it was supposed to be 30% off, but they had not updated the computers yet. And so the guy had to pull out a calculator and figure out what 30% off was and actually ring that in and give it to me at the correct price. But if I wouldn't have known what I was doing, if I wasn't thinking about it and figuring, okay, I know it's going to be this much off, so here's the price, then you're going to get gypped. Okay, you're going to end up paying more than you should pay for something that is obviously legally on sale. Okay, now markup we could spend quite a bit of time on, because there's several different ways that you can experience markup as a consumer or as a young person. But the bottom line is the easiest way to explain it is this: everything you buy, regardless of what it is, anything you pay money for is marked up. In other words, that is not the original cost of that item or service. Okay? For example, let's say you walk into Academy, you're going to buy some Nike tennis shoes. You buy the Nike tennis shoes, you pay, let's say they're on sale, and it's like $89. Okay? Even on sale, okay, there is still a markup. That's why they can put things on sale. For example, Academy is going to buy those shoes directly from Nike. Okay, Nike has what they call a wholesale price. Okay, where the shoe may cost, let's say for those $89 shoes, let's say that Nike pays $15, which is probably a little high, to have those shoes made for them in their warehouse. Okay, that's the cost that it takes to make that shoe. Okay, it's $15. Well, Nike's got to make a profit on that. And so what Nike's going to do is they're going to say, okay, Academy, Dick's Sporting Goods, any of these major players that buy a ton of shoes from them. Okay, we're not talking about a little store that maybe buys, 20 pair a month. They're not going to give them the same price. So Nike's going to say, okay, well, if you're going to buy 1 million shoes a month from us, okay, well, we're going to increase, or we're going to mark up our cost to $30. Okay, so let's say that's probably not even close to what they mark it up, but we'll just, for our example, say it's $30. So they sell it to Academy for $30. Academy turns around, and we'll say for simplistic sakes, they turn around and selling it to you for $90. Okay? And we'll even say that's the regular price. So Academy sells it to me for $90. We'll say that's the regular price. Okay? So, the reason I know this would not be a true scenario is because Nike's not going to make $15 and allow Academy to make $60. Okay? Because if Academy buys this shoe for $30, they mark it up from $30 to $90. Okay? That's a 200% markup. Because they increased it, $30 would be $60, that would be 100%. And they increase it another $30, that would be 200%. Okay? And Nike's just not going to do that. You know, Nike's a good company, but they make a ton of money. Okay? That's why their founder and CEO and owner and all that can, give all the Oregon State, all those uniforms, a new uniform every time they play a football game. Okay? Because they've got money. Okay? But that's where the markup occurs. So there's really two different areas where it's been marked up. It was marked up here, and they call this the wholesale price. Okay? Then it's marked up here. Okay? And they call this retail price. Okay? Now, so you can see why Academy, let's say, for example, this is a true scenario. Well, you can see why Academy can say, oh, we're going to give you 20% off that shoe. Well, if we take this 20% back, okay, 20% of 90, okay, if we took 20% off for a sale, okay, $90, 20% off, that's $18. Okay, 90 minus 18 is $72. So this is the sale price. Okay, well, they only paid $30 for the shoe. They're still making $42 on you. Okay, that's why stores can offer things for sale, and they're giving you a great deal. They're still making a ton of money. They just are. Okay, that's why we call it the capitalist system. Okay, the capitalist system goes on supply and demand. If you don't want those Nike shoes, then they're not going to charge you $90. If the demand for those Nike shoes is not real high, they're going to charge you $50. Okay, that's why some Nike shoes are cheaper than other Nike shoes. That's the ones that have the Jordan name on it are so expensive because it's a high demand for those because, Lord knows the rubber sole on those are better than the rubber soles on the ones that aren't Jordan. He actually touched them. No, he didn't touch them. He didn't do anything like that. Okay? So that's what markup is. That's how this system works. Okay? You go from the manufacturer, Nike, cost them $15 in their shops over in Thailand. Okay? That's where most of the major brands don't manufacture stuff in the U.S. because it costs too much. Because over here we have unions that protect laborers and things like that where they can't, overseas they can go pay a guy $5 a day and he can make 100 shoes in a day, as opposed to paying that same person in the U.S., they'd have to pay him, probably close to, I guess it would be close to probably $90 to $100 a day. And quite honestly, that's not a real good wage for a guy, and so he's probably going to make 50 shoes instead of 100. The guy overseas that lives in a third world country where unfortunately a lot of things are made, or in China, $5 a day is a high wage to them, and they know there's 1,000 people waiting for that same job. And so they work hard, they work long hours usually. That was a big thing about Nike. I think they've since changed. There was a big thing about Nike there for a while that they were using what they call sweatshops, where they just basically paid day laborers to come in and sew the shoe and do whatever it takes to make a shoe, and they give them a $5 bill on the way out, and then the next day they get somebody else to do it. And they make them work, 12, 14, 15 hours. And a bunch of the corporations were doing it, not just Nike. And so, Public said, hey, you can't do that, and so they moved it to wherever they've moved it now. But a lot of them are made in Korea, Indonesia, China, mainly in the Asian countries. And, all you got to do is look at your shirts, look at the tags on them, look at the, tags on your pants, your shorts, whatever, and it'll say where it's made, okay? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about discount. We're talking about markup, talking about sales price, and we talk about tips. We talk about sales tax and tips. Well, at the end of the day, on this $90 or on this $72, you have to pay tax. Okay? Now, a lot of times if you do it online, there's not a tax charge, but that's slowly but surely changing where, like used to, you could go on Amazon and buy stuff and there was no tax. Now they add tax to it, okay, by what state you're in and because there's different, wherever you're at, there's different stuff. So they are starting to charge tax. That was a big deal about the Internet because where does the sales tax go? Sales tax for us goes to the state. All the money they charge goes to the city and the state that you buy the goods in. Okay? So the $90 is not the price I'm going to pay. I'm going to have to pay tax on it. Okay? Now, that's how those three things work. We got markup, discount, sales tax. The other one we're going to talk about today is tip. Okay? When you go to the restaurant, you're served, you get a meal, hopefully your parents leave a tip. Okay? Because a lot of times those waitresses and waiters, they work on tips and just a small hourly charge, and that's it. They may get $3 an hour plus their tips. Okay? And so, if you don't give them a tip, then what they basically got was $3 an hour to serve you. And that's really not right, and we'll talk about that later. But these are the things that we're going to talk about today. Okay? Discount, markup, and so we're going to go through some examples. Okay, now, how do we find these particular things? Okay, let's look at an actual example. Let's look at number 6. It says original price. The original price of something was $36. Okay, and they're going to discount it 30%. Okay. Now, there's two different ways that you can do this problem. Okay, we sort of talked about this the other day. I can't remember. It was on percent increase and decrease. We sort of talked about this the other day. So, right off the bat, the way that I do it is this way. Okay, because this way to me is easier. I just simply look at 30% and I say, okay, a discount means what? We're going to increase or decrease the price? Obviously decrease, okay? We're discounting it. I look at 30% and I say to myself, and this is what I do in a store wherever I'm at, I go, okay, what's 10% of $36? Because that's easy. 10% of $36 is $3.60. Okay? Follow me so far? 10%. 10%. Now, I'm going to show you the mathematical way to do it, but this is what I do in my head. 10% of $36. Well, remember, folks, all we do when we're dividing by a power of 10 is just move the decimal one place. So it's $3.60. So if I take $3.60, $3.60, $3.60. Okay. Well, what I would do at this point is what's 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9. $9, 60 cents, 60 cents, 60 cents, $1.80. So I'm going to get $10.80 off that price. That's my discount. Okay, that's what I do in my head. Okay. Now, what is the mathematics behind it? Two ways to do it. Because if I just say I get $10.80, does that tell me the price I'm paying? No. I have to do what? I have to subtract $36. I have to go $36 minus $10.80. Okay? And so that's what you would have to do to get the final price. Okay, what are we doing today? There's got to be a formula. There is a formula. Okay? If you take the original price times the discount percent, okay, that will equal the discount. Hang on here, let me write. I'm gonna write the same thing. I'm just moving it over so I can get to it. Okay, so the discount dollar-wise is equal to the original amount times the discount percent. Okay? So if I plug in the information that they've given me in this problem, it's simply $36 times 30%. But what have we said that we have to do to percents before we multiply or divide them or anything? Change them to decimal or fraction, in this case a decimal, 0.30, and that's going to be equal to my discount dollars. Okay? Now, when you multiply that out, guess what? You're going to get 1080. So the discount dollars is $10.80. But they don't want that. I believe they want the new price. Okay? So they want the new price, so I've got to take, for the new price, I have to take the original and subtract the discount dollars. Okay, so for the new price then, for NP, I take the original amount of $36 and I subtract $10.80 from it. And when you do that, you get what? No. 25 what? Not 2 cents, 20 cents, yeah. So the new price is equal to $25.20. Now, there is an easier way to do this mathematically. I don't do this in my brain because for me it's not that easy to do in my brain, okay? I don't do it when I'm at a store. I don't do this, but this is what you're doing. Here's the easier, or then another way to do it, same process, just a little different, okay? So here's what we do. If I pay the original price would be equal to, is that what percent of the price? If the original price, what is the percentage there? 100%, right? If I pay the original price, I'm paying 100% of the price, okay? Well, what are they going to discount that 100%? 30%, right? So if I'm going to take 100% and I must discount it 30%, how much is left? 70%. So I've got original price is 100%. The discount is equal to 30%. So I'm going to take 100% minus 30%, and that's going to give me 70%. Now, if I do it this way, all I have to do is this. Huh? Discount's 30. If I do it this way, then all I have to do is this. $36 for the new price. I take $36 and multiply it by 0.7. 70%. 70% as a decimal is 0.7. Okay? When you multiply that out, 7 times 6 is what? Is what? 42? Yeah. And here's my 4 times that is 25, right? So now, 252, and you go, whoa, wait a minute. No, hang on. Okay? We have, goes right there. Move it one place. That's got one decimal, so I move it from, let me move the 0. You're moving it from here to here, one place for the one decimal. And so that's 252, but I'm talking money, so I got to add my 0 to it. So 2520. On paper, it's easier to do it that way, yes. Okay? In my head, it's not, for me to multiply 0.7 times that, it's a little bit more difficult. I mean, obviously I could do it. But when I'm at the store, a lot of times I just pull out my calculator, my phone, get the calculator, I go 0.7 times 25, 0.7 times 36, and it tells me exactly what it's supposed to be. Okay? Now, let's say that on that amount there was a tax of 8.5%. Okay? There was a tax of 8.5%, which is about normal. That's about what most cities around here in the Tarrant County area, they're going to charge you. I think the actual percent here in Fort Worth is 8.125, which would be 8.25%, or 8.25, excuse me, 8.25, which would be 8.25%, I think is the actual one here. I haven't paid attention to it lately, so it may be something different. But if so, this is my sales price. So to figure the total price now, I have to take the sales price times my tax. Okay? And once again, there's another way to do this, but this one's probably the easiest way is just to do it this way. So to find my total price, I take the sales price times my tax. Actually, I'm going to take, to get total price, I'm going to do this. Let me give you this one. I'm going to take the sales price plus the tax percent times sales price. In other words, I can't just take sales price times tax percent, because that just gives me the tax. To figure total price, okay, I'm figuring the total price. I take the sales price, which is $25.20, plus the tax percent, which is 8.5%, times $25.20. In other words, we have to add the tax to our sales price to get the total cost to us. Okay? Now, that means I simply do this, $25.20 plus 0.085 times $25.20. Why did I do 0.085? Why? Right. Because it's a percent. I've got to change the percent to a decimal. So I simply move the decimal 2 places to the left and get 0.085. Now I have to multiply 2520 times 0.085. So it'd be 0.006 carried by 2, 12. Bring down a 0. It'd be 0.16, 41, 20. So it'd be 0.02 carry my 1. Be 3, 4, 1. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decimal places. So I go once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. So $2.14. So we have 25.20 plus $2.14. And so my total price out the door is $27.34. Okay. That eraser's really bothering me on the ground. Is that yours? No. Why is it up here? Okay. So that's how we figure discount with the sales tax. Okay. Now, what they're asking for on number 6 is just the new price for the discount, because they don't give you the tax. Okay. But they will, in a couple of problems later, give you tax, and so that's why I want to go ahead and cover it as we're covering these. All right. Let's look at number 7. Number 7 says there is a wholesale price of $55. Then we have a markup of 50%. Okay? They want to know the new price. Once again, 2 ways to do this one. Okay? 2 ways to do it. Here's how you figure the markup price. Markup price is equal to wholesale price plus markup percent times wholesale price. Okay, that's the actual formula that you would use. Okay, I plug in the information that I've been given. Okay, and I'm going to, underneath this, put retail price. because that's sort of what they're talking about. Not necessarily what they're talking about, but probably. So you got wholesale price then. So we have MP equal wholesale price is $55 plus 0.50 times $55. Once again, 0.50, this right here is 50% changed to a decimal. So 50, there's my decimal, move it once, twice, 0.5. Okay, or 0.50, same thing. Okay, so the markup price then is equal to $55 plus, I take 0.5 times 55. That would be 5, carry my 2, 275. I have one decimal place right there, so that's $27.50. I'm going to take $55 and add $27.50 to it. What do I get? When you add $55 and add $27.50 to it. 70. No. No. What? 82.50. Yes, 82.50. Remember, you're doing this. That's what you're doing. Okay. And remember, where we got this right here is from this. Okay? Yeah. It'll have like I think it's number, like they're doing food bill, sales tax, 6%. Yeah. Now, the other way to do this one, the other way you can do it is simply this. Markup price is equal to, and how did they put it in the book? Let me see what words they use. Yeah, they're not going to, they're just basically, they're not giving any words for it. Basically, you do this. We take our 100% of the wholesale price plus the 50% of the markup times the wholesale price. Okay? A while ago where we took, let me put this together. A while ago where we took and said 100% minus 30% and got 70%, you can do the same thing here. If you pay a markup, then that means I have to pay the 100% of the original price. You getting all this, Zach? Because I'd hate to have to take up notes today and take it as a quiz grade, just because we decided to pack up 5 minutes, 10 minutes early. Okay? If I'm paying 100% of the wholesale price and then they're going to mark it up more, then I take the 100% that I have to pay the wholesale price and take the 50% markup. And that means it would be 150% times $55, which means I do 1.5 times $55. 1.5 times $55 is what? Obviously, it's going to be the same price. Okay, it's going to be the same as the other one, which was $82.50. Okay, so the difference is you don't have to take the markup or the discount and subtract it or add it back to the original price if you do it this way. It's already done for you. Okay, the same step, I mean, we still have an addition step here and we have an addition step here. So both places you have to add. It's just a matter of, do we add first and add the percentages, or do we add last and add the actual markup price with the wholesale price? Okay? And so, like on this one, this might be Nike, this could be the Nike and this be Academy. Okay, that's what it could be. Here's Nike's price, here's Academy's price. Or it could be the other way. Here's Academy's price, here's the retail price. Okay? And so that's the two different ways that you can do that problem. Okay? Let's look at number 9. Number 9 says the food bill. Let's talk about tips right quick. The food bill before tax is $45. The tip, what was the tip amount? 15%. That's a standard tip amount. If you go to a place where you've got a big group, like you go into a nicer restaurant and you got 20 people, they're going to put the tip in your bill. And it's usually going to be 18 to 22% instead of 15%. Now, what people tip, that's your decision. My grandfather, he's passed away. He no longer is living, but my grandfather went in a restaurant one time, and he was a business guy. He owned his own businesses, had 3 or 4 or 5 stores, and so he went into a restaurant one time, and he was real particular about getting service. But at the same time, if he got service, he would usually tip 20 to 25%. Well, this one particular instance, he went into, it was like just a steak place or some place that he needed ketchup with his meal. It was obviously a restaurant, not like Wendy's. We don't really tip at Wendy's usually, but it was just a restaurant. He went in, wanted ketchup for his meal, asked the lady, "Hey, can I have some ketchup?" "Oh, sure, I'll bring it to you." About 10, 15, 20 minutes later, no ketchup. So the lady comes by again and says, "Hey, I was needing some ketchup for my meal." And she said, "Oh, yeah, I'll get that for you." And so she had done some other things. She really didn't give them real good service and didn't really fill up their glasses or anything like that. And so at the very end, he got his bill. And the bill was like $25. It was a good while ago. He's been passed away since a long time, but it was $25, and so he put $25 with the ticket, and then wrote on his napkin, "You will find your tip under the ketchup bottle." And he left it on the bill. And so, of course, I'm sure the lady picked it up and go, "Oh, I guess I should have got him some ketchup," because he didn't leave. And he rarely ever did that. My grandfather was very, very nice, very generous, but he rarely ever did something like that. But, he's just like, "I just wanted ketchup with my meal. I mean, how hard is it to bring me a bottle of ketchup?" And so obviously she didn't. Obviously there's nothing under the ketchup bottle because the ketchup bottle was not on the table. Okay? So, I'm not necessarily saying that is the correct way to handle that. Okay? So for him, for that hour, she just got, whatever she made an hour and didn't get any tip from him. But the way we figure the tip is always figured on the money before tax. Okay, you don't figure the tip on tax on your bill. Okay, so when they bring you your bill and they say it's whatever it is, $11. Let's say you bought something for $10.99 and then they added the tax and it was like $12.15. You don't figure the tax on the $12.15. You figure you figure the tip on the $10.99, not the $12.15 that you're going to pay at the register. Okay, or the money you're going to. And so some people make you pay the tip at the table. Some people make you pay the tip on the receipt. It's several different ways to do it, but it's real simple. Okay, you do the same thing here. You either take $45 times 0.15, which is the tip. Okay, well, let me write it like you're going to have to do it that way. You're going to have to go plus 0.15 times 45. In other words, here's our bill. Here's the amount of the tip. We got to add the two things together. Or you can do it this way and just say, okay, the tip is 15%. So we just simply take 115% times 45. That will give me the total, which would mean take 1.15 times 45. Either one of these is going to give you the bill after the tip. Okay? It'd be the bill after the tip. Do what? What, Nick? 15 was given to me. 15% was given to me, If I pay 100% of my bill, that's the $45 plus the 15% tip. Okay? Your homework. It's not going to be a lot. We're going to go 5 through 13. So 9.7, 5 through 13. I will have tutoring in the morning, and then I will also be here from 3:30 to 4 tomorrow to tutor in the afternoon. Okay? You may go. No, we are not outside.